What's up, Raptors fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. It's time to talk about some big news this morning. Now, there are several articles that came out talking about OG Anunoby and how he could potentially be on his way out from Toronto. And the first article was by Aaron Rose reporting that NBA front offices targeting OG Anunoby as potential trade piece. Now, we'll go into this article in just a moment, but I also wanted to touch on this as well. Shout out to Rhapsody on Instagram saying that Blazers will use their 7th pick and other assets to trade for OG Anunoby this offseason. And as you see in the caption there, it also states that the Utah Jazz will also be one of the teams along with the Blazers to potentially take a look at OG Anunoby. So I'm going to break all of these rumors down for you in today's video. So if you're ready to watch this video, guys, make sure to hit the like button. Let's try to get this video to 100 likes. If you want to hit the subscribe button as well, that'd be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. And unfortunately, guys, there's no shout out for today's video because no one got my trivia question correctly. So the answer to my trivia question was that Danny Delano Banton was the incorrect middle name for the last trivia question, for those of you who may be wondering. But let's talk about OG Anunoby and this article, because this is very important news, because not only is this just rumors about teams looking at OG Anunoby, there's also some other rumors coming out as well. This is being reported by Jake Fisher. So I'm going to quickly go through this article with you guys here, that OG Anunoby appears to be creating quite the buzz around NBA circle these days. The Toronto Raptors forward has reportedly emerged in trade chatters as a player to watch this summer again. According to Bleacher Report, Jake Fisher, Anunoby has not directly expressed his discontent with the organization. However, there is belief among rival front offices that the 24-year-old has grown dissatisfied with his role per Fisher. OG Anunoby did not voice any frustration with the team during his exit interviews following the season, and was reportedly mentioned as a member of the core moving forward by Raptors president and vice chairman Masai Ujiri. At one point, Ujiri went so as far as to explicitly state that the Raptors core would remain intact throughout the offseason. Now, this is quite interesting, especially when we talk about OG Anunoby and his discontent with the organization, that he potentially isn't getting the role he wanted. Now, OG Anunoby, obviously coming into the NBA, wasn't really known for his offense. He came into this league being more known for his defense, and throughout the years, he's definitely polished his offense a lot more. Now, a lot of Raptors fans had actually compared him to Kawhi Leonard. He's obviously not very likely to live up to those expectations, despite the fact that he's only 24 years old. But I can see why OG Anunoby has become discontent. Coming into the Raptors organization in his first season with the Toronto Raptors, they kind of made him into a 3-and-D shooter, and not much has changed since. And just when it seemed like moving on from Kyle Lowry, that potentially OG Anunoby could grow into becoming potentially that third or second option behind Pascal and Fred VanVleet, well, Gary Trent Jr. comes into the picture and really just becomes a third, fourth option, which really doesn't leave a lot of room for OG Anunoby to grow. And no, this is not to say that the Raptors should move on from Gary Trent Jr., but just in terms of having different roles on this team, Gary Trent Jr. has become a very solidified, you could argue he's become a third scoring option or offense at times, and he's really just done his job making an impact on the Toronto Raptors as well. So I can see, again, we don't know how true these rumors are, but we can see where the dissatisfaction from OG Anunoby comes, and then throw into the fact that we drafted rookie sensation Scotty Barnes, who seems like he could be the Raptors' #1 option moving forward. And I can see why OG Anunoby would be a little bit angry with the Raptors and not very happy with his role. OG Anunoby was there for a long time. He's actually been with the Raptors for 5 seasons, believe it or not, and he's been through those DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry days where he was just a 3-point spot-up shooter. And although he's trying to evolve his game, not much has changed, and the Raptors really haven't made that effort to include him into our offense as well. He kind of just, you'll notice with OG Anunoby, some games he takes 7 shots, other games he'll take 17 shots. He hasn't really had a consistent role offensively, and I can see some of those rumors potentially being true. But with that being said, we do have to talk about some of the indications potentially about the Blazers looking to move their 7th overall pick. Now, maybe these are just rumors. Again, Jake Fisher isn't exactly known for being a legitimate source, but it is important to note that the Raptors did interview some top prospects that are projected to go anywhere from the top 10 to top 15, and one of those prospects was Benedict Mathurin. Now, Benedict Mathurin is actually a very interesting prospect because he's a great 3-point shooter. He can actually switch on defenses. He's very tall. He's approximately the same size as OG Anunoby. Maybe not strength-wise, but height-wise he is. He's a great catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. He's also got a great potential to be a great isolation scorer as well. So again, maybe the Raptors do potentially look to trade OG Anunoby for that 7th pick for the Blazers as well. And that's not the only player the Raptors talk about. When we talk about them talking about some of the top prospects, another player we have to talk about, which I talked about in my last video, was Dyson Daniels as well, who is a great defensive player, but doesn't necessarily shoot the ball all that well. He's not known for shooting, so obviously the Raptors would lose some shooting if they were to draft someone like a Dyson Daniels. But it is interesting to note, as stated in my previous video, Masai Ujiri has a knack for spotting top talent, and maybe he sees something there. And again, I'm not suggesting the Raptors trade OG Anunoby, but potentially there are some truth to maybe that 7th pick that the Raptors could look to trade for. Maybe not OG Anunoby, maybe they find another way to trade for that 7th pick. But it is important to talk about the two teams involved as well. Now let's first talk about the Portland Trail Blazers, because those rumors about them potentially wanting OG Anunoby. Now obviously the Raptors and the Trail Blazers, this wouldn't be the first time becoming trade partners. We know the Raptors got the best of them in that Norman Powell, Gary Trent Jr. trade. But when we talk about the Portland Trail Blazers and a trade that would actually have to happen, obviously the Blazers would need to include some salaries for this trade to work. OG Anunoby makes approximately $16-17 million, and the Raptors would have to acquire that back as well from the Portland Trail Blazers. So they can get that 7th pick, but they would need to be some other players involved in that trade. Now, obviously, one player that comes to mind is Anthony Simons. He is a spectacular player, 22 years old, he has shown great potential last season to be a great ISO scorer, get his own buckets. He's hit some clutch shots as well. But it is to note, guys, Anthony Simons is listed at 6'3", 180 pounds. So if the Raptors do trade for him, I'm not saying I wouldn't trade for him. He's a spectacular player. But he is 6'3", 180 pounds. So where does he fit in our lineup of when we want these tall, switchable defenders? Because we already have Fred VanVleet, who's listed at 6'1", 6 feet. And then we have Gary Trent Jr., although he's listed at 6'5", he plays much smaller than his size. So we're definitely going to be lacking a little bit in that 3-and-D department, because we don't really have someone we can slide in at that 3rd spot. And Anthony Simons could potentially be a shooting guard, but again, I particularly wouldn't be very high on putting Gary Trent Jr. at that 3 spot. And even when you take a look at some other players, Josh Hart is a name that comes to mind. Yusuf Nurkic would be someone you could probably sign and trade for, but even then, Yusuf Nurkic and a 7th pick for OG Anunoby is not something I'm doing. I'm personally very high on OG Anunoby, and I still think he needs that opportunity to really prove himself as a 20-point scorer. And he's shown that he can hit some clutch shots as well. We've seen with it. So again, the trade between the Portland Trail Blazers and the Raptors is very unlikely, just for salary purposes. And again, even with Anthony Simons, it would have to be a sign and trade. And I think the Blazers are very high on him. They're not going to move him, first of all. And I just don't see a trade happening between them. Now, to talk about the other team that was rumored to potentially look at OG Anunoby is the Utah Jazz. Now again, same thing. We do have to include salaries when we talk about trading. And there's not a lot the Jazz could give up that would really satisfy me as a Raptors fan that I would want for OG Anunoby. Obviously, a name that comes to mind could be Donovan Mitchell, but again, it doesn't really make sense for the Blazers to trade their best player, Donovan Mitchell, or excuse me, I should say the Jazz, to trade Donovan Mitchell for OG Anunoby. It obviously have to be other players as well. But talking about some of the other players on the Utah Jazz, Mike Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic is a name you could potentially talk about. But again, Mike Conley's 34 years old. He's declined a lot, and his salary is increasing season by season. Another name you could potentially look at is Jordan Clarkson. He's a great bench piece, and the Raptors could definitely solve their bench issues while freeing up a little bit of cap space. But again, there's not really a deal that gets done here with the Utah Jazz. Realistically speaking, there's not something they could give us that we would want for OG Anunoby. Again, it could be a possibility unless Masai somehow finds a way to get Donovan Mitchell. That'd be amazing. I don't see that happening. I don't see the Jazz giving up Donovan Mitchell just for OG Anunoby. We'd probably have to include a lot more. And there's just, again, besides Donovan Mitchell, there's not a lot of players that I would like back in an OG Anunoby trade that would really satisfy me. And of course, you could always throw out the Rudy Gobert trades as well. That's not happening, guys. That's just a ridiculous amount of money he makes. And we're essentially trading one of our best shooters for a non-shooter. So again, I don't really see a trade happening between the Blazers or the Utah Jazz, but it is something to keep your eye on, because although OG Anunoby has not voiced his frustration with the Raptors and his role, I could definitely see that being an issue moving forward. And I definitely believe that the Raptors should consider really incorporating OG Anunoby more into their offense. I really do believe that. And obviously, OG has to really tighten his handles as well moving forward, but it'll be interesting to see how the story develops throughout the offseason. But with that being said, I do want to hear from you guys and what your thoughts are on this OG Anunoby trade rumors. Do you think the Raptors need to involve him more in his offense? Do you think he could potentially not be satisfied with his role with the Raptors? Let me know all of your thoughts about these rumors and what the Raptors could potentially look for in a trade with the Blazers or the Utah Jazz. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, guys, I do have a trivia question for you today. Now, this trivia question is more off of I'm just going to pick one comment. And I want you to really just give me more than just a player name. I am now going to read this trivia question. Which of these players is likely to be traded first? Is it A, OG Anunoby? Is it B, Pascal Siakam? Is it C, Fred VanVleet? Or is it D, Gary Trent Jr.? Now, I want you to not only name one of these players, I also want you to give me a reason of why you think this player is likely to be traded first, but why the Raptors could potentially look to trade this player and why the Raptors should trade this player. So I'm going to pick a random comment. There's no winners for this trivia question. I'm just going to pick one comment that makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to feature that on my next video, guys. So I just want to thank you guys for your support of watching this video, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.